Hello everybody, this is Joe Petriolo and I'm here to introduce my project. I hope you all enjoy it. So anyways, it's going to be a project that will be conducted at the beginning of the school year, and the purpose for it is really to teach key social studies content, and we'll be doing this by students getting in teams and researching ancient cultures and civilizations. What I want to teach about are the 5 main categories of world history, which is social, political, interaction with the environment, culture, and economy. And there's going to be many terms that will fall under each of these categories that students will need to learn. The purpose of this is for students to get familiarized with the process we'll be using for the rest of the year when we study these different places. The goal statement, which I'll just read out loud for my students, is by the end of this unit, students should gain an overview of the ancient civilizations that have shaped the world today. They should have familiarity with many important social studies terms and aspects of cultures throughout the world. Students will be prepared to study different societies throughout world history for the remainder of the year by forming a strong base knowledge of social behaviors. Students will be able to learn about cultures from the past by analyzing primary sources. Some contextual analysis and some background. The reason why I say this is blended learning is that it is set up in a way where it could be blended. However, this is really going to be taking place primarily in a traditional classroom setting, almost entirely. However, students can work on this remotely within their teams, and I will have it set up so that if a student's sick, it won't make, or is absent from school, it will not make a difference. They'll still be able to work on it. And a lot of that is just how you set up your LMS and how exactly you take care of everything. So, for example, even though a student is required to be at school, they do still miss school, but I post all the presentations I give right on Canvas in a day slide, so they know if they click on the module for whichever day it is, whatever the date is, that they can find all the information we went over. It's in a K through 12 setting, particularly in 10th grade. And it is time-bound, meaning students will have due dates every day of the project. There will be artifacts that will be turned in by the team. And it is performance-based because this is primarily skills that they will be learning, and I will have a lot of that throughout where I'll be teaching about how to use particular skills. So anyway, there's classes of about 20 students, so you have about 22 students per class. Sometimes it can be up to even 23 or 24, and sometimes it's even lower than that. They're very diverse, and what I mean by this is you have students who learn in all different ways, so it's important to consider which learning styles and preferences does each student have, and how can I adapt my instruction to conform to that. Then third, there are some students that have reading comprehension and issues, as well as even dyslexia to a point. So it's important for me to consider this with my instruction and decide how I can use different strategies, such as having more images and allowing students to have more time to look back at some of these resources. And then their prior knowledge, as far as the ancient civilizations are concerned, they should have had some background on this in the 7th grade, so 3 years before, where they learned about each of the ancient cultures. And then also, I will be the social studies terms that I would like them to know. Some of this should have been covered in 9th grade geography and human interaction. Okay, learning objectives. I want students to be able to define major social studies terms that I will continue to use throughout the year, apply characteristics of civilizations found in research to the 5 SPICE categories, Conduct research using primary and secondary sources, and present information confidently and clearly to the class. So some of these, there will have to be many different things that I teach them prior to them just researching and creating a project. Some instructional strategies that I will use quick, short lectures, going over new material. I will also have guided learning periods every day, and much of this will be project-based. They will be giving presentations, so they'll need to know something well enough to explain it to the rest of the class. They will be researching, and will also play a lot of learning review games, because I will want these students, once they've learned these terms, to be assessed and see where they stand, and I can also see where they stand as well and see if I need to go back and reteach anything. Some instructional materials. I'll need my projector for my daily lectures. I use Keynote, which is very similar to PowerPoint. I'll need my computer. The students will need their iPads, particularly for research and creating artifacts. Canvas is the LMS we use, and I will rely heavily on Google Suite to allow students to work collaboratively together on their projects. It's the implementation plan. Day one is the first day of school, so first I will be just introducing my syllabus and kind of giving them a background of what the class will be like. Following this, I want to introduce the project, so I'm going to go through the rubric and go over some directions. I'll create the teams. I want them, once they are in teams, just to get set up for the rest of the week. So create the Google Docs, share them with everybody in their group, create a research page that everyone can work on together so they can all post their research all to one section. And then we're going to start getting into SPICE. So SPICE is social, political, interaction with the environment, cultural, and economic. Each of these categories will have to be taught with background information on them, because there's a lot of keywords that students aren't going to know. When I go over social, okay, I can't just write social mobility down on the assignment sheet and say, look for examples, is there social mobility? Students aren't always going to understand that, so I'm going to go up there, discuss what social mobility means, and teach that to the class. Other things like that would be, are there gender roles? How are race relations in this culture? Things like that. So I want to go over each of these keywords that would be part of the social aspects of a culture. Day 3 will be a similar process to day 2, but it'll be political. Day 4 will be interaction with the environment, 5 cultural, and 6 economic. The basic format of each of these 5 days will be a short 5 to 10 minute lecture, followed by on whichever one of the SPICE categories it is, followed by the guided learning period where they are researching the ancient culture that they've been assigned, and they'll be researching specifically for whichever category I just taught about. So if I just taught about social aspects, I want them to research and find social aspects of, let's say they're doing the Roman Empire or they're doing the Inca Empire. I would like them to find social aspects of each of those. Okay, then day 3 would be political. I'll teach, what political means. So, the functions of the government, and then I'll teach them the difference between, authoritarian and democracy, and some basic terms that are essential to understanding what political means. And then they'll do their research, interaction with the environment, then their research, and so on and so forth until we get to day 7. Day 7 will be a little bit different. They'll now have an entire presentation created. They will have researched. They will have, they should at this point have some content knowledge and understand the words. And I'm going to have to teach them some presentation skills. So I model some good presentation strategies, and then they create a presentation outline which is just essentially them planning out what they're going to present, what are they going to say, not a script so much, but just an informal note sheet that they will have with them while they present. I don't want them to go up there and wing it, so to speak, because our high school students certainly love to do that. Then days 8 and 9 will be the presentations. Okay, formative evaluation. I will use the formative assessment data to help inform my instruction. When students are just from communication and from the vocabulary games and different things that we do in the classroom, I'll use that to decide, do I need to go back and change the way I'm teaching something, or is what I'm doing okay? Next is the summative evaluation plan. I need to use my quizzes and project grades and presentation analysis. So basically, how were the presentations? Could they explain this as if they were teaching somebody else? I have to use that to inform, well, should I have done this whole project differently? How could I go back, maybe if I do this again next year, and redesign it so that it'll be better in the future? Okay, and my reflection is really just all about how this process, this instructional design process, has taught me how much goes into design. So you can't just think about only your instructional activities, okay? You have to also consider at the exact same time your learning objectives and your assessments and how they all tie together. So essentially, you create your objectives. Your assessment needs to match those objectives, or this assessment isn't measuring what you want it to measure. Your instructional strategies should stem from your objectives, but also be measured by your assessments. So if all three of these are in line, then it's good, effective instruction. If they're not, there's going to be some discrepancies. Moreover, I think it's important to understand the direction or the order in which you make these. So first I'd start off with the objectives. What do you want learners to know? Then move over to creating your assessments before you even think about how you're going to instruct it. So and your assessments should measure what do the students or the learners know? What have they learned? Then you can create your instructional strategies. So your question when you're creating these instructional activities are, how can I teach my learning objectives in the way that will best prepare my students for the assessments? So as long as you follow that format, you can be a very effective teacher. So these are my sources, and I hope you all enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.